Hi, everybody. I'm Melinda Emerson, the Small Biz Lady, America's #1 small business expert. And I am excited to welcome you to another episode of the SmallBizChat podcast. Now, this is March. We have a special show in store for you tonight because it is Women's History Month. And I have three fierce ladies here with me who are going to break down all aspects of business to help you grow and learn and be your best in your business. Now, tonight's show is about digging in and learning more about your customers and why they buy. We're also going to talk about the pros and cons of franchising your small business. And we've all worked so hard. We're going to talk with an expert who's going to teach us how to protect our businesses so we actually have something to pass down to the next generation. If you're looking for ways to build a deeper relationship with your target customers, you're in the right place because we're going to be talking about behavioral economics. And if you've been thinking about franchising your business concept, we'll be talking with a business owner who's done it successfully. And if you're building a business because you want to build a legacy for your family, my third guest will teach us what we need to know about how to protect our business assets. Now, all of these experts are going to give you information and tools and tips so you can build a long-term plan for success. Here on the Small Biz Chat, we talk about how to start and how to grow successful small businesses. We consider this podcast a peer-to-peer mentoring program. Now, the mission of Small Biz Chat is to end small business failure, and we always bring you sage advice from multiple perspectives to help you do just that. Now, the Small Biz Chat podcast can be seen on my Small Biz Lady fan page on Facebook and on my YouTube channel. Please be sure to subscribe and share so that other people can get all of this great information on how to be awesome in their business. Now, tonight, I am so excited to introduce my guest. My first guest is Melina Palmer. She is the CEO of The Brainy Business, and she's a behavioral economist. And we have Christy Ford, who is the co-founder of the Scout Guide. And we'll also be talking with the Honorable Tracey L. Gordon, who is the Register of Wills in the city of Philadelphia. She's going to be talking to us about how to protect our assets. I am so excited to learn from all of my guests. So with that, it's time for me to introduce my first guest, Melina Palmer. She is a celebrated global keynote speaker with her mission to help great brands do great things by leveraging the power of behavioral economics. She is the CEO of The Brainy Business, which provides behavioral economics training and consulting to businesses of all sizes around the world. Her podcast, The Brainy Business, understands the psychology of why people buy and has had downloads from over 170 countries and is used as a resource for teaching applied behavioral economics for many universities and businesses. Melina also teaches applied behavioral economics through Texas A&M's Human Behavior Lab and writes a behavioral economics column for Inc. magazine. Her first book, What Your Customer Wants and Can't Tell You, and her second book is What Your Employees Need and Can't Tell You, which was published in 2022. So for more information, you can go to thebrainybusiness.com. Melina, welcome to the Small Biz Chat podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
All right, so you got to tell me your origin story. How in the world did you find your way to behavioral economics? Because I got to tell you, when you first emailed me and told me that was your expertise, I was like, okay, what is that? So tell us all how you got on this journey of being such an expert, sales and marketing expert, essentially.
Yeah, so it's definitely not the hottest of terms as far as field names go. But my undergrad is actually in business administration and marketing. And in one class, there was a tiny section of something that I knew was just exactly what I wanted on this, how people buy, the psychology of buying decisions, but it was a really tiny piece. And I spent the better part of 10 years calling schools and asking them what programs existed and how I could get a master's in that. And it didn't exist yet. But after 10 years of working in brand strategy and marketing consulting, I found and was introduced to behavioral economics, which is essentially the psychology of why people buy. And that is then something I go in and apply. And because I was early into the field, especially on the applied side, it was a pretty academic space when I got in there, being able to focus on how you actually use this stuff, the things that were so obvious to me, and how communicating better with other people's brains can help businesses just wasn't being talked about anywhere. So that, I said, why not me? And ended up rebranding my whole company and launching the podcast, and it's all kind of jumped off from there.
So you explained to us what behavioral economics is, but let's get into this deeper, because I always thought that there's emotional buyers and there's logic buyers. And so, but based on behavioral economics, you're saying, it's your subconscious that's making all these decisions. And so talk to us about how your research, does it rebuff this myth of emotional buyers, or is that just another layer to it?
It's actually mostly on that more emotional level. But if we take a step back and learn a little bit about how the brain actually makes decision, how it works, is think about your brain like a person riding an elephant. You have that logical, conscious rider, knows where it's going, has a plan where we want to go. We know what's up. But you're kind of at the mercy of that subconscious elephant. And if it wants to sit down or run in another direction, you kind of have to go where the elephant wants to take you. And that is that subconscious, which does the bulk of our buying. The actual every person makes an average of 35,000 decisions every single day, which is crazy when we think about it. But the bulk of those are done subconsciously by that elephant. And we would like to think that it's making those decisions using full logic all the time, but it really has to make the bulk of those decisions on habit and predictability. That's why we love the status quo. That subconscious brain likes to know what's going to come next, what's most likely to work. And so those rules that the subconscious uses is what behavioral economics is built upon. What I do is help people to see how you can take those common rules and then apply them in a way that's going to make it more likely to be successful, more likely for people to choose you and to feel good about those decisions.
Love it. So what is it different for B2B versus B2C, depending on, because do corporate buyers use their subconscious mind, or is it a little bit more complicated than that?
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, we're still dealing with people making decisions in those departments. And so if you were to say, you're selling cloud-based computing software, you have a new system that you're trying to get a team to move over to. Anybody who's done that type of selling, you've been in those meetings and the executive team is on board and the management likes it and the pricing is right and everybody loves it. And then there's somebody that's deep into the department that doesn't like the idea of using that system and says, oh, I'm not going to move, I'm not going to do that. And it derails everything. And it's because of a status quo bias, loss aversion, or maybe even just the way the information was presented to them, the frame that was used for it. And so understanding the people, even when it's billion-dollar decisions, we are still, the elephants making those decisions for the bulk of it.
So what made you get interested in consumer behavior? Was it just because you were working with a lot of consumer brands?
Like I said, it was in that undergrad timing. So it was before I even, got in and started into that space. I think I've always been interested in why people do things and been a pretty natural questioner. And so being able to look at something and go, that's weird. I wonder why that is. And so that's something that people don't do enough anymore. And when we understand more about the habits and the way that our brains make decisions, we kind of just go through the motions a lot of the time and don't even realize it. And so if we can invest a little bit more time in being thoughtful, we can't be more thoughtful about everything, but you can be a little bit more thoughtful about, why did I open that email and delete this other one? Why did that LinkedIn request feel super spammy? And why was this other one something I was interested in opening? Why was that article interesting and not that one? And hey, as a small business owner, what does my stuff look like? Because it's funny, we kind of forget that we're human when we start to be communicating. And when we're in work mode, the stuff we write is often really weird and not something that would compel us to buy at all. And it's because of that, elephant writer problem.
I get it. So you talk about in one of your series that it's not about the cookie. Now, what does that mean?
Yes. So this is my framework for pricing strategy and for change management. And just the really quick is, imagine we're walking down the street, having a great conversation, and all of a sudden there's this amazing scent that comes down the street. And we're still talking now, but kind of distracted by what this is and where it is, and more like cartoon characters now with our noses pulling us down the road. And it's sweet and salty. We realize it's cookies baking. We're so excited, and we see there's a line, and they say we get a free sample and buy 3 get 1 free. And before we know it, we both walk out of there with eating a cookie and an undisclosed amount in a bag for later. And in another version, if we're walking down the street, same conversation, someone shoves a flyer in our face and says, "Oh, today only I have cookies and they're on sale. And if you only pay for 3 of them, if you buy 4, and here's a sample." And you go, "Ugh, that guy, gross, get out of here." We were having such a good conversation. How rude is he? And by the time you see the line and smell the cookies, you're writing a Yelp review about how terrible their practices are. So in this point, we know it's not about the cookie. We're definitely buying in the first case, we're not in the other. It's also not about the price, right? It could have been $3 cookies the first time around and 50-cent cookies in the other. And it was more the stuff that happened before the price had more of an impact on the decisions we made. And all the same things happened as well, but they were in a different order. So understanding what's happening in the brain is part of that framework and presenting it in the right order.
Like it. All right. So I know a lot of times you help brands with pricing, and there's this rule, those of us that do internet marketing, you never put a 0 after something. You always want to use a 7 or a 9, or some people say you need to use a 5 at the end of the number. Does that really matter?
So the good news is it doesn't really matter, as is saying there. So we can kind of let go of feeling that stress of picking the perfect number. The big decision that you would want to make is to determine if you want your brand or your product or whatever it is that you're putting out there to be associated with being a deal or a bargain or a value space, in which case rounding down is a really good strategy. And then, 975, pick what works well for you. If you don't want that and you want to be more of if you're a luxury item, if you're something people are buying as a gift or something that's more of that splurge, you can be on that whole number, and it's better to do that. It's like people don't typically like to buy discount wine, when you're looking at things like that. So being at ending in a 0 or a 1 or a 2, something that's rounding up can be something where it feels better and doesn't have that discount connotation if that's not what you want.
All right. Last question before the break. What is the one word that increases sales by 38%? And what concept is at play here?
Okay. So it's not a magic word itself, but the concept here is one of anchoring. And so it had to do with selling Snickers, and they had 2 different ads at the grocery store. One said Snickers buy them for your freezer. The other said Snickers buy 18 for your freezer. And if we were making those ads, it'd probably feel really weird to put numbers like that out there, kind of arbitrary and whatnot. But the number 18, because it set a high anchor in the brain, ended up increasing the sales by 38% because of the way that we interpret, where them is kind of a fancy word for 0 in this case, and we're not necessarily going to buy. And 18, we say, whoa, like I'm way better than everybody else. I don't need 18. I'll just get 6.
Very, very interesting. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more with Melina Palmer about behavioral economics. Stay with us. Are you ready to become a boss? Hi, I'm Melinda Emerson, Small Biz Lady. Click the button below and take my free boss quiz. This assessment will help you learn your entrepreneur type and find the right business model for you. Get this information about the #1 asset in your business, Yeah, that's you. Welcome back, everybody, to the Small Biz Chat podcast. I'm Melinda Emerson, Small Biz Lady, your host, and we are talking about how to figure out what your customers want and can't tell you with Melina Palmer. All right, Melina, tell us, what are the top 5 wording mistakes that small businesses make when they're writing copy or producing ads?
Yeah, so I've broken this into 5 categories, which would be being too boring, too much, too vague, too confusing, and too literal. So a couple of those are pretty quick to explain and understand. If your messaging is boring and long, it's hard to get people to buy. And if in general, if you're asking yourself, is there too much here? The answer is yes. So you can pretty much always cut something. It's good to go in and look at. My favorite example about not being boring is cotton candy grapes. Looking at something super commoditized and being able to make it feel fun and that people are charging a lot more for and excited to pay for, that's a really good example. So the next grouping that comes up with this is where we look at being vague and confusing. And it's really amazing how often websites, ads, emails are missing a call to action. So if you're going to be putting a bunch of work into having someone, like, they have to think about what they're supposed to do, we don't really get it, they're going to be bailing out on that. So what you want to look at is, if you can only do one thing, if this piece of communication is only going to get one thing done, what is the most important thing? And then put all the eggs in that basket to make it so it's really clear and compelling for someone to take action on whatever that is. So the last piece is being too literal. And what I mean by that is, we like to give really specific information, and it feels like we need to communicate really tiny details. Like, people are going to go look it up and they're going to know we didn't say everything exactly right, or something's been hanging out for a long time. So in this example, there's a nail salon by my house, which I go to now. But years and years ago, they had this big sign out front that said Best in the South Sound 2009, 2010, 2011. And that's all fine and dandy if it was 2012, but it was 2017. And so this message, which should have been good and compelling, actually made my brain kind of go, what happened? What's gone downhill for these last 6 years? So if you instead reframe that to just say Best in the South Sound 3 years in a row, it's now a very compelling message when it's not quite so specific.
Now, in your book, you talk about behavioral baking. What does that mean for business?
Yeah, so when you think about applying all of this, it's easy to feel a little bit overwhelmed, as I'm talking about so many concepts and things going on in the brain, and want to have you think about applying it in the same way as if you were going to, be a professional baker, you wanted to start baking. You probably need to know what the ingredients do. So because sugar, flour, butter, eggs, they can be combined in many different ways to create all sorts of different things. And you need to know what you want to make. And you're probably going to follow some sort of a recipe. You're not just throwing everything in a bowl and hoping it becomes brownies at the end of the day. And if you are, good luck. But instead, we also would never say, as you start baking, if you make a cake and it's kind of soupy or something's off, you're not going to say, oh, I tried baking once. It's not real. It didn't work, because that's ridiculous. But we do that with work stuff all the time, right? Like, I tried Instagram and I didn't go viral. That's not a real thing, right? It seems silly, but we feel that way. So with implementing and testing out these concepts, you want to start with some simple recipes that are kind of tried and tested. I have some in my books that you're able to go in and start to work with. And then from there, maybe you can spice things up with a little bit more, but it's about small tests, little things, a tiny reframe, how'd that work? And look at it more of a long-term investment in the testing of behavioral economics instead of a one and done fix all.
Good advice. It's like people giving up on love, right? It's like you get your heart broken once and you're like, I'll never love again. I mean, it's like people behave that way about stuff in business too. And, the thing is that you got to test. And you got to test some more. That's really how this works. All right. Last question for you. What is the best business advice you've ever received?
I would say my favorite piece of advice, I was working in an advertising agency just out of college, and the woman who was the receptionist and also ran the books, it was a small agency, and she had said to me, Melina, you are worth the hourly rate that we're charging for you. Whatever that is, know that somebody picked that for you, and that is the number that you are worth. And don't ever shy away from that, and you're worth even more. But it's hard in small business sometimes, and especially, being just out of college. And it was a number that was higher than I would be paying for anything at that time. So to have that confidence in the pricing, I think was really a great piece of advice.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Melina, for your valuable insight. It was very helpful. And next, we're going to be talking about how to franchise your small business. I'm Melinda Emerson, the Small Biz Lady. You're watching the Small Biz Chat podcast, and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Melinda Emerson, Small Biz Lady, and I want to welcome you to Small Biz Lady University. Our mission here is to end small business failure. So all of the courses here are about two things: how to become your own boss, or how to make money online. So that's what we do here. So whether you want to learn about email marketing and sales funnels, or you're ready to get started with social media selling, or if you're really just getting started with e-commerce, you might want to jump into our How to Sell and Market Online course. Either way, if you want to learn how to become your own boss and do it well, I have everything you need here at smallbizladyuniversity.com. If you have any questions or have any technical problems getting signed up, just email us at support@melindaemerson.com. Take care. Welcome back to the Small Biz Chat podcast. I'm Melinda Emerson, your host. Hopefully you're joining us on my Facebook page, my Small Biz Lady Facebook page, or on my YouTube channel. If you hear something you like, please share it. Leave us a comment if there's a topic you want us to tackle in another episode. But most importantly, please subscribe and share. Now I'm excited to introduce my next guest. She is Christy Ford, and she is the co-founder of the Scout Guide. Christy started her career as a photographer and later moved to Charlottesville, opening George an antique and home store with her mother. As the business grew, Christy realized there was a lack of successful advertising opportunities for local small businesses and was driven to find a solution. So the Scout Guide was born. Today, she and her partner have more than 79 cities where their franchise publications are printed and shared to support the local business community. Christy leads creative direction and branding across the business. For more information, you can check out thescoutguide.com. Hi, Christy. Welcome to the Small Biz Chat podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So how did you seems like you're like a serial entrepreneur. How did you sort of like jump from business to business and finally landing on the Scout Guide?
I know I was born into an entrepreneurial family. Both parents had several businesses, and it was, I think, just in my blood. I was a photographer in New York City for years, moved to Charlottesville with my husband to start a family, and had the luck of starting a small business antique store in George with my mom. And in doing so, I just realized Charlottesville, for those of you that are familiar with it or not, it's the home of the University of Virginia, and it's also the second largest wedding destination venue in the country. So we get...
I didn't know that.
And to be a Charlottesville, the worst thing you could possibly hear was that somebody great was 2 miles up at the Boar's Head Inn and didn't know you existed 2 miles west. So we were constantly drawing maps for our clients, because they'd find us and they'd say, oh, what else is here like you? And we're topographically absolutely beautiful. We're ensconced in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it's beautiful, but we're kind of a 50s architectural town, and Main Street isn't as prevalent as it is in other towns. So you really had to know where to look to find the amazing small businesses that exist. So a good friend of mine and, my business partner, Susie Matheson, both mothers of 3, and she has started a blog that we all kind of were captivated with. She was like the girl about town that started supporting small businesses in our community. She was the one that was telling us about the art galleries to go see and how to support the local art and what we're missing in the restaurant world. And we were all just completely captivated by what she was doing and where she was going. So she kind of came to me and said, let's team up. Small businesses want to advertise on my blog, and that just doesn't feel right. But with your photography, my sales, let's make a beautiful book that we can hand out to people coming through Charlottesville that shows them the Charlottesville that we've fallen in love with. So in 2010, out of a labor of love for Charlottesville, Virginia, we set out to create the first Scout Guide.
So how long did you run the Scout Guide with your partner there in Charlottesville before you guys decided to franchise your concept?
Yes. So what we set out to do was to get visitors to shop locally from afar was our game point, our plan. We wanted to have a really quality guide. And for those of you, hopefully you guys are all familiar with the Scout Guide, but it's a beautiful, high quality, coffee table worthy book that hopefully does not get thrown away. So we set out to create that and hope that visitors and locals alike would take them home and keep them and shop locally from afar. That started happening. What we didn't foresee happening was people calling us to say, well, our town needs a Scout Guide. And we were like, okay, well, I'm not sure how that's going to happen. Susie sold it. I made it beautiful, but let us figure this out. So we did. We started with Charleston, South Carolina, and a good friend of mine, she made a beautiful book. And we thought, okay, we're on to something. And in true transparency, we started as a license agreement because our lawyers advised us to start in a license agreement because we had no idea if we were going to have 2 or 10 or 100. So the first several were license agreements, and we grew very quickly. And in doing so, we kind of came back to our lawyers and they, told them what was happening and about our growth. And, the beauty of the Scout Guide is the quality and the aesthetic. And it was very important for us to make sure that consistency was happening as we were opening up more books across the country, that everybody that was investing in the Scout Guide license at the time was going to get the same quality wherever they went. So that's when we decided, with our lawyers' help, that we really were a franchise because we were quite specific in the integrity of the product and what the outcome would be. And we offered a ton of support. So yeah, we in 2013 had maybe 15-ish licensees that we converted over to franchisees. And we currently have 79, as you said, across the country.
So how did you prepare? I mean, you said that you had a lawyer, but did you have a franchise consultant? Who did you pull in to? Yep. Because it's a lot of work to franchise a business. I've helped 2 other businesses franchise, and so I know a little bit about this, but I want you to tell us, what kind of team did you have? What kind of research did you do before you kind of did it?
Yep. So what we didn't know was helpful because we had no idea what an undertaking starting a franchise system was. And basically, per the license agreement, we set up a model. It's a very simple model. The Scout Guide is all paid advertising. And it's featuring the people. We believe that communities are special because of the small businesses that make up the communities. So the Scout Guide is a way of highlighting those faces and those places and what they're doing. So we had a very simple model, but when you go to franchise, it was very important that you basically shore up your foundation. And so whereas we grew very quickly and we kind of, I know you're going to ask me, the best business advice I've been given. And I'll say that the motto that Susie and I have kind of lived by since we started is just do it. The Nike motto, we just do it. So we found ourselves, we were often running before we knew what we were creating. So we never sat down and said, let's create a franchise. Our lawyer said, okay, I think you're moving toward a franchise. Let's go. So we did have an amazing legal team. We had an amazing operations team at headquarters. And what we had to do was kind of pause growth and really sit down and look at what this operation looks like and what our business is. I mean, in detail, beyond detail. So we went from like a 9-page license agreement to an 80-pound franchise agreement. And there was trademarking involved there. You know, we have a business manual that has all the operations. I mean, we had to be so specific. And when I look back on it, amazing. When you're in it, you have to do it all at once. So it's incredibly overwhelming and daunting. But then you kind of have your backbone and your foundation laid for you then to move forward and be free.
So this operations manual, did you write it yourself? Did you hire an HR person to help you? Like, how did you do it?
We did have HR, yes. I mean, we did beef up our team and to do it, because it took a team to really build out 80 pages. I mean, the legal team was amazing as well, but really we had to cross the T's and dot the I's, and we had to know all the particulars of the ins and outs of what the franchise system, how it operated, how we supported our trademarks. I mean, a million things that you don't think about. I feel like we were forced to create our business plan in the first couple years in its entirety, whereas many people evolve with it. And it really, you know, I mean, it's still the backbone of our business. I mean, it is very much our creed. We can, you know, change in the operating manual, we can add addendums, but we are who we are, and that hasn't changed since 2013 when we were advised and franchise created.
So how do you screen people that call you up and say, hey, I'm interested in putting a scout guide in my town? What is your criteria even for, you know, whether or not the people are a good fit for you?
Yes. Well, good question. And I think we've learned a lot over the last 13 years. In the beginning, we were so flattered that people even wanted to do it. We were like, yes, of course. And we didn't really have the support. We were so new. It was just hard to know what type of support to offer, what questions to ask and vet. So we've learned a lot. We've been lucky in the sense that all of our growth has come to us organically. Every single franchisee we have has come to us. We have yet to crack the nut of knowing how to go after a particular market. So, you know, I think the beauty in that is we have a conviction that we share. Everybody that comes to us has a passion for small businesses and wanting to bring the community together through the pages of the Scout Guide. But now, you know, I will say too, one bad franchisee is as bad as 10 good ones. So you really, really want to be careful and vet. And we've gotten much better about asking the right questions and making sure we're as clear in our delivery of what our model is, to understand what the ask is and make sure that they're up for the task. So I think through our training, through our, we've gotten better as a result in all ways.
Mm-hmm. One last question before I go. What is the cost? If I wanted to start I'm assuming there's a Scout Guide maybe in the town where I live, but if I wanted to come in and be a franchisee for you guys, what kind of upfront investment is that?
Yes, it's a $50,000 upfront investment. That is the franchise fee. And so, yeah, that's where you start. And then what's really nice, pardon?
No, and then what do you need to like kind of operate like once you?
It's very simple model. So you really just need a desk. There's no real estate component. You don't have to have employees. It's incredibly simple. And the majority of we're 100% female owned, which we're very proud of. We love men and we've had men. But I think, you know, there is a massive attraction to the Scout Guide from women because of the flexibility. We all, for the most part, and we go the whole gamut now. The range has really expanded, and we have women coming and choosing to do this instead of business school, all the way up to empty nesters. So we've got women of all shapes and sizes and, like, you know, varying states of career. But the flexibility is what's so nice. So you really can do it yourself. It's a ton of work. It's a labor of love, but what we are storytellers and connectors at heart. And, we are the conduits to our community and pulling together small businesses and making sure, that the community knows they exist. This all started when big boxes were coming on strong. And it was our effort to kind of combat the Restoration Hardwares and the Targets and say, hey, if we don't support our small businesses, we're going to become a really boring town. When Barnes and Noble, you could be in any Barnes and Noble across the country and think you were back in your own town. That was like really scary to us.
Yeah. No, I get it. And when we come right back, we're going to talk more about the pros and cons of franchising your small business. You're watching the Small Biz Chat podcast. We'll be right back. Are you ready to become a boss? Hi, I'm Melinda Emerson, Small Biz Lady. Click the button below and take my free boss quiz. This assessment will help you learn your entrepreneur type and find the right business model for you. Get this information about the number one asset in your business. Yeah, that's you. Welcome back to the Small Biz Chat podcast. I'm Melinda Emerson, Small Biz Lady, your host. Let's talk more with Christy Ford about how she franchised the Scout Guide. All right, Christy, so what is the hardest thing about managing your franchise? You've got 79 franchisees. So how hard is that?
I think what is such an attractive thing about the Scout Guide is probably what makes running it the most difficult. And that is, we have 79 individual business owners that are making their own business choices. We have a model with which they, build their business within, but they make different choices. So there's no one size fits all. And it's hard to be able to, you have women deciding to make a book of 150 pages, and then somebody that wants to take the summer off and that doesn't care about making quite as big of a book. So it's all different business choices, all great and all important to them. And we love that the Scout Guide offers the flexibility, but it makes it challenging to create opportunities and initiatives that, and you have people at different levels, they've owned the Scout Guide for 3 years or 10 years. So, there's ever changing states of where people are at. And that makes it a challenge. It's a fun challenge. It's a lot of fun. And we learn from our veteran franchisees. But it's, it's hard in that everybody is not doing the exact same thing.
So the level of commitment can be a little different.
And it's not so much commitment, it's just choice. It's just their value proposition, their towns are different. And that's the beauty of the Scout Guide. Everybody's town is unique. So everybody kind of curtails it to their town. So it really is the beauty of the Scout Guide that you can do that and have that opportunity and still have the support of all the things that we do align and do together as a brand. But yeah.
So what about your expansion plans? How many more franchises do you think you're going to open in 2023?
I think, as long as the right people come along, we're excited to expand. I mean, we feel like every small town in America should have a Scout Guide. So, and that's how we see the brand expanding. We want the brand to be a household name. I feel like we have a really unique advertising publishing opportunity for small businesses, and we want to make sure that we cover all the small businesses and communities that we possibly could serve.
Love it. Thank you so much, Christy. You have really provided some really interesting information, and I think that it's important for us to think about this because a lot of people may be sitting on a business they can franchise. So when we come right back, we're going to talk about how to protect this business you've been working so hard to build. I'm Melinda Emerson. You're watching the Small Biz Chat podcast. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Melinda Emerson, Small Biz Lady, and I want to welcome you to Small Biz Lady University. Our mission here is to end small business failure. So all of the courses here are about two things: how to become your own boss or how to make money online. So that's what we do here. So whether you want to learn about email marketing and sales funnels, or you're ready to get started with social media selling, or if you're really just getting started with e-commerce, you might want to jump into our How to Sell and Market Online course. Either way, if you want to learn how to become your own boss and do it well, I have everything you need here at SmallBizLadyUniversity.com. If you have any questions or have any technical problems getting signed up, just email us at support@melindaemerson.com. Take care. Welcome back to the Small Biz Chat podcast. I'm Melinda Emerson, your host. Now it's time to talk about protecting your business and having some assets to pass down to the next generation. My next guest is the Honorable Tracey L. Gordon. She serves as a pillar of change for Philadelphia constituents for over 20 years. Her organizing and legislative success propelled her from the ranks of local grassroots leadership and advocacy to becoming Philadelphia's first African-American Register of Wills. Her tireless dedication to the community has resulted in election protection laws, citywide neighborhood cleanups, advocacy for seniors and youth, as well as property value increases and protection. As the Register of Wills, Tracey has implementing comprehensive probate reform to improve the quality of life for Philadelphians. For more information, you go to philadelphia.gov/wills. Tracey, welcome to the Small Biz Chat podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you because, you have been a lifelong public servant. And so I know that you are now the Register of Wills, but how did you get interested in serving the public?
Well, around 5 years after I purchased my first home as a single parent of 4 children, I purchased a home in Southwest Philadelphia, and the neighborhood, to me, began to decline due to demographic shifts. And so this concerned me because I always wanted my children to grow up in a clean, safe neighborhood. And I decided, when I noticed the decline, that I had to do something about it. And one of the things that we do here in Philadelphia to protect our blocks and neighborhoods is become block captains. So I started to become a block captain, and I started organizing right on my block, and I started recruiting block captains around my block, because I knew my children would be playing around the corner because we live in row houses. And so from there, I just started organizing black captains, organizing cleanups, and becoming a volunteer at my children's school so I could just make sure that they had a high quality of life. So that's how I got started into.
Now, what is the Register of Wills? I mean, it's a title we've all heard for years, but what do you actually do?
Everybody asks that question. This office has been in existence since the 1600s, way before the Revolutionary War, way before the Civil Rights War. And it's called something different depending on what state. So I'm in Philadelphia in the state of Pennsylvania. So basically, a lot of things I'm saying is based on the laws and the Constitution of the state of Pennsylvania. I'm also the clerk of Worcester Court. So the Register of Wills, what we do here is we oversee the transfer of generational wealth. In other words, when people die and they have wills, there's certain paperwork they need to bring in order to be able to get the assets of the deceased person. Most people think it's an automatic transfer of wealth. There is no automatic transfer of wealth. There's no, just because you're the only child and your mother or father or your aunt or uncle verbally commits and says that this is your things, there is a legal process that you have to go through called probate. So you have to go to your local Register of Wills office, and you have to come and bring proof that you represent the estate, whether you have a will or not, and that person is either the executor or the executrix. And you have to come with the actual proof of the will, the physical will, and which ID showing that you are the executor, and then proof of who the heirs are. So basically, I am the one that will approve the will, legitimize the will. Even if you don't have a will, you need to come because my office is where you come get the paperwork so you can take it to the mortgage company and say, I represent the estate, transfer, just conduct the business, because they're not going to talk to you unless you show proof that you are the representative of the estate. So for instance, if you own a house and you want to leave it to your child, they can't just go over to the title company and say, my mom died, transfer the title from her name to my name, unless you come to my office first and open the estate so you can get the proper paperwork. Then you go to the recorder of deeds, which is a total different office, and then you can show them, hey, here's the paperwork, transfer everything in my name, as to transfer everything into my name based on the will. Now, if you don't have the will, that's a whole different other story. So then you have to come and request a hearing so I can appoint an administrator. When you have a will, you decide who's going to be that executor in case of a male, or that executrix in case of a female. That person is the person that you place in your will that you want to conduct your business.
So let's talk about will. So when should someone have a will prepared?
When you're 18 years old, you're able to conduct a will. Anybody that's under 18, you can't make a will. So 18 years old basically is when, you own things. People tell me all the time, just to get somebody used to understanding the importance of how you transfer your generational wealth. 18 years old. Many people, mostly rich people, always tell me that they assist their children in making a will so they can understand the process. I always tell people, you don't make a will when you get old. You make a will when you get an asset. And assets are not just physical things. They're not just houses, cars, stamp collection, businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Your assets is minor children. If something happens to you and your husband, who's going to take care of your children under 18 if you're not allowed to take care of them? If you have disabled children, who is going to take care of that child when you're no longer there? So it's simple estate planning that is not being taught in our schools, not really being taught in our colleges. I graduated from Temple University with a business degree in risk management and insurance, and I learned about all types of insurance, but no one ever told me about making wills. And that's your insurance to protect your generational wealth. So when you get an asset, that's when you make the will.
So a will, is that a DIY thing? I mean, can I just go online and get a template online and have somebody notary it? Is that the right way to do it, or should you actually have an estate lawyer help you with it? Best practice is go to a state attorney. Don't go to the attorney that was your when you get in an automobile accident. You go to an estate attorney or contact your local registrar of wills, and they have booklets that detail everything that you need to protect your generational wealth. I always tell people, because I'm not an attorney, don't go to your neighbor, don't go to your aunt, don't go to the smart uncle. Go to an attorney, a state attorney. This is one of the most important decisions that you're going to make in your life, and that's making a will, because that protects your generational wealth. A will consists of these components. Of course, the date. You're going to name, this is my last will and testament, and I am of sound mind. This is who I name as my executor. This is the person that is going to have the copy of the will, because you should keep the original and let people know where the original is. Some states actually let you register your will at the office before they die. In the state of Pennsylvania, we don't see the will until you die. So you have to let somebody know where the will is. You have to let the executor or executrix understand what their role is. Their role is to conduct the business. They're going to bring the will and they're going to conduct the business. They're going to take the will and get all the paperwork necessary from my office and take it to get access to the assets. Once they get access to the assets, then you, in your will, you're going to list all your assets, house, car, businesses, and who they go to. Who are the beneficiaries? The house goes to her. The business, I want my business dissolved, maybe, but the executor is responsible of making sure
all your debt is paid before the distribution of that wealth. So the best answer that I can say to anybody, Melinda, and I'm telling everybody, best practice is to consult with an estate attorney, because everybody has different situations. They may have been married before. They may have children in other from other marriages. They may have several businesses. So you want to go to somebody that has an expertise in estate planning, and they will create that will for you to sign.
So one of the things I always had somebody say is that the number one thing you want to avoid is probate court, because probate just involves a bunch of fees and the state getting part of your estate. True or false?
I would say false. I would always tell people, and it was that person an attorney that tells you this?
It's just for years. It's just things I've heard people say for over and over again. Avoid probate court if you can.
Yeah, there are ways that you can avoid it. Is the way how you set your estate up. But I always tell people, because I'm not an attorney and I'm not allowed to give out legal advice, you need to go to the attorney and say, hey, listen, how do I avoid this? So they can tell you the rules, and so they can properly advise you. Because when you don't get the proper advice, people think they're going to avoid inheritance taxes. And then, so they don't probate. So then the house sits there, or the property or the asset sits in the dead person's name. And that becomes a problem, because you cannot get access to anyone's assets without opening up the estate. There are legal ways around it, but you need to talk to an attorney, because your situation is different from theirs and other people's. And you need to talk to an estate attorney and tell them what you want to do, and they will tell you how to do it.
Now, is it any different if you own a business, or is a business just another asset?
Yes, a business is that's your asset. Your car is your asset. Your stamp container, anything that you own or have an ownership interest, that's your asset. And absolutely, you want to make sure, do you want the business dissolved once you die? I mean, I had a famous restaurant owner here in Philadelphia, and he wanted his business to be dissolved upon death, and he had a state attorney, and he had a clad tight will, and his business dissolved. And they just, after the debt was paid, it was distributed to however he wanted it, and he put a clause in there. If any of the beneficiaries contest this will, then they will be automatically written out the will. So yes, your business is your asset. And a lot of people die, and the kids don't have interest in the business. They may not even have interest in living in the house or owning the house that you left. That's one of the things that you should automatically do. When you own a business, when you have a child, when you get married, when you turn 18, if you have assets, make a will. Because if something happens to you, you are the one that has the ultimate authority to decide who is going to carry out your business, because you can't carry it out because you're dead. You want to make sure all your debt is paid. So you want to name the executor, and it may not be one of your children. Or it may not be your oldest child. It may be that middle child that you know is going to take care of the business. So that's the most important part, is to name the executor or the executrix that's going to take care of the business. Some people pay a percentage to the executor. At least let them know. Some people are shocked. My aunt died and left me the executrix and never even told me. So they're forced to do something that they may not want to do or may not be qualified to do. And also, when best practice is name an alternative. Because that witness, that executive that you name may decide they don't want to do it, or they something happens to them, or they can't be found. Then you want to name an alternative. And you also, when you make a will, in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, we don't see the will until you die. So you would make sure you keep it in a safe place, make a copy, and make sure people know where the will, because all kinds of things happen when you die, or after your death.
All right. What is the best business advice you've ever received?
The best business advice I've ever received was to buy a home. So my children would have somewhere, to live, It's one of the best investments I've made. It's helped me as a single parent ground my children, and they have somewhere safe and loving to live. And as a result, I have 4 kids, and all 3 of them own their businesses and they own their houses. And one is on her way to owning her house under the age of 30.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much, Tracey. You've been a wealth of information. What I want to do now is bring back my other guests, Melina Palmer and Christy Ford, and we are going to do a quick panel that we affectionately call Hit It or Quit It. Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask each of you 4 questions. You're only going to have 30 seconds to answer, and you cannot repeat someone else's answer. And if you go over 30 seconds, I'm going to give you the cowbell. All right. So I don't want to do that. I have my cowbell from my days at Virginia Tech in the stadium. I don't want to give you guys that. So what we're going to do is, Melina has been quiet the longest. So we're going to start with you, Melina, then you, Christy, and then you, Tracey, and then we'll go to the next question. So the first question is, what is your favorite podcast? Melina, what is your favorite podcast?
I guess it's not fair to say the Brainy Business podcast, since that's mine.
Listen, I allow shameless plugs. If that's the one you want to talk about.
It's the one I have to listen to the most. I listen to every single episode, but I'll say Negotiate Anything by Kwame Christian. He's a good friend and an amazing host of his show.
I like his podcast too. All right, Christy, what is your favorite podcast?
Oh, I am still just a How I Built This Girl. I love Roz.
I like that podcast as well. All right, Tracey, what is your favorite podcast?
It's called $1 Million Worth of Game, and the hosts are from Philly, Wallow and Gilly. And the reason why I love it is because my youngest son loves it, and that's quality time I spend with him when we actually watch the show together. So there's a little pop culture, but there's also teaches them a lot about business.
I love it. And sometimes the older kids you got to sneak in that quality time and not them figure out what you're doing. I trap my son in the car sometimes. That's how I do it.
Yes.
All right. Next question. Christy, you're up first this time. Then you, Tracey. Then you, Melina. What is your favorite business app? Favorite business app?
My banking app.
Hey, that's real.
I use it all the time to sell my kids money.
Make sure the money is there. Absolutely. All right, yes. Tracey, what is your favorite app?
My business app? I guess it would be, I would say Facebook, Instagram, my social media. I love it.
You can say Facebook. That's an app. That's a big one. It's one of the most powerful ones on your phone. Lots of people using it. All right, Melina, what's your favorite business app?
While I don't use the mobile version of it, I would say Canva is something that I use a lot for my business. And I was just finding video techniques and stuff they have in there that I'm really excited to be playing around with. So Canva.
Yeah, I actually heard that there's a Chat GPT integration with Canva. That's pretty cool too. You might want to look at it. All right. So third question, Tracey, you're first this time. Then you, Melina. Then you, Christy. All right. What is your favorite old school marketing tip? Favorite old school marketing tip?
Door to door, face to face.
Door to door, face to face. Yes. Love it. All right. Melina, what's your favorite tip?
I'm gonna go with the KISS method, right? The keep it simple, silly. Be nicer than saying stupid.
I like that. I like
it too.
All right, Christy, what is your favorite old school marketing tip?
I love both of those, but if you can't do door to door, I am a big pick up the phone and call.
I agree. And my favorite old school tip is actually write a handwritten note.
Yeah.
Because people send in so much email. If somebody actually got a nice note from you on stationery, that's actually something that they would value. They would not throw that away. All right. Last question, ladies. Melina, you're first. Tracey, you're second. And then you, Christy. What is the best business book you have ever read? Best business book you've ever read?
While it might not be a super traditional business book, I would have to say A More Beautiful Question by Warren Berger. And it is about this really great way in how our minds come up with questions better, helping us to find and solve our big problems. It's about innovation, just really, really powerful stuff about the brain and interesting stories. So A More Beautiful Question is my favorite.
I like it. I like it. All right, Tracey, what's your favorite business book?
I would say Blackonomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. That was one of the favorite books I had him as a guest speaker here in Philadelphia. It was simple and it was very informative for me.
Mm-hmm. All right, Christy, what is your favorite business book?
I'm going to have to go with The Success Principle by Jack Canfield. I seem to reread that on a regular basis.
Well, that's the telltale sign of a great book. And one of my favorites is Disrupt You by Jay Samit. I like that book because he says, in order to disrupt the world, you got to start by disrupting yourself. And I love that. And I buy those books a lot and give them to a lot of young people in my life because I think it's a good book to like kind of help you get your act together, get motivated. All right. Thank you so much. You guys have been amazing guests. Thank you, Melina Palmer. If you're interested in learning more about her, head over to thebrainybusiness.com. Thank you, Christy Ford. If you're a local business looking for advertising, check out thescoutguide.com. And thank you to the Honorable Tracey Gordon, the Register of Wills, the City of Philadelphia. And her website is phila.gov/wills with an S. Thank you all for joining me for this episode of the Small Biz Chat podcast. If you're ready to grow your business and you're looking to use email marketing, head over to Small Biz Lady University. I've got a great 6-week online course that'll put you in the right direction and start closing more sales right away. All right, I want to leave you all with this. You never lose in business. Either you win or you learn. I thank you for joining us, everybody. God bless.